Glad that there is a lot of activity and excitement for the first day of the CRPP Forum. So it is my pleasure to welcome you to the third annual CRPP Partnership Forum, which is being organized by the CRPP partners, the Asian Development Bank, the Ohio Commission, the International Institute for Environment and Development, the French Development Agency, the Green Climate Fund, the governments of the United Kingdom, the governments of Ireland, and the Nordic Development Fund. My name is Nisha Krishnan. I'm a climate change specialist at the Asian Development Bank and also the program manager for CRPP. And I'll be your MC for this morning's session as well, unfortunately, as your timekeeper, so I'm sorry about that. So climate impacts, as you all know, are being experienced locally with poor and vulnerable communities suffering the brunt of these impacts. Women and marginalized groups are also affected differentially due to their existing vulnerabilities. And there's significant opportunity, though, for us to build resilience at the local level through tailored poverty reduction programs, may these be in investments in health, in social protection, livelihoods, financial inclusion, or urban poverty reduction, which are the two themes for this year. But this is actually the context through which the Community Resilience Partnership Program brings together countries and partners in the region to discuss how countries' systems could be better improved to facilitate such local level adaptation actions, especially these actions that can address the nexus of climate change, poverty, and gender, and how we might actually invest in scaling these solutions through the systems. In past years, this forum has actually focused on themes such as adaptive social protection, climate resilient agriculture. Last year's themes were around decentralization and the opportunities for integrating local level climate resilience there, as well as technical and vocational education and training. These discussions have informed and continue to inform the kind of investments and programs that the CRPP tries to do through its work. So this year's forum now focuses on two new themes for CRPP: urban poverty reduction and financial inclusion. Each theme, I guess I'm actually meant to go through slides. There you go. So if I could just, this year's forum focuses on these two new themes. Each theme actually has dedicated discussions over the 2 days, exploring evidence for and practical ways to design and deliver these investments in ways that address the underlying causes of vulnerability to climate impacts, increasing the meaningful participation of communities, especially women and marginalized groups, and ultimately build resilience. So we will actually focus, if you can look at the agenda, we will focus on urban poverty reduction today and on financial inclusion tomorrow. And given that gender is a core focus and at the center of CRPP, both of these themes have integrated issues of gender throughout the agenda. They're structured similarly across the 2 days. We'll have an opening plenary that helps frame the critical issues that we'll discuss throughout the day before splitting into 2 parallel sessions to hear from countries and partners and dive deeper into the topic. So today, under urban poverty reduction and climate resilience, we'll focus in the spotlight sessions on community-based green infrastructure, and the second parallel session will be social systems in the context of urban settlements, which I understand is not that easy to capture as a thinking, but really it's thinking through how social protection appears in informal settlements and in the urban area, how we can think about community-informed and led planning processes, urban agriculture, since food security is also an issue. So those sort of themes will be covered in the second parallel spotlight. We'll then move to working group sessions and dialogue sessions that can help shape and inform what CRPP and other partners can do over the course of the next few years. And please note that there are actually 3 parallel working groups for that hour in the afternoon. So you can choose which session you go to depending on your interests and join that room. And then today, after the roundtable dialogue, we'll actually also have 3 partner-led sessions on local level adaptation and a reception later this evening. All of this is actually more accessible in detail on the QR code at the back of your name tag, just in case you need the more detailed agenda. And the second day will sort of follow the same sort of approach as to having a scene-setting plenary, going through spotlights, and then working groups and a roundtable dialogue. We'll hear more about that tomorrow. If I can, I'm sure all of you are very eager for the Wi-Fi password if you're not already connected. This is also at the back of your ID, but if not, it's also on screen right now, and anyone in our back row can also help you with that. And then just to say that you will also have to register, just some housekeeping remarks, you'll have to register separately each day. And then if you are an ADB-sponsored participant and resource person, please do ask that you submit your documents to Jen and Timmy, who are at the back as well as at the registration desk. And we'll provide sort of reimbursements by tomorrow. A few more hospitality sort of arrangements. Lunches over both days will be in the second floor ballroom, and then, as I mentioned earlier, there will be a welcome reception later this evening by the poolside. And so before we turn over to the opening speakers, we kind of wanted to share a little bit about who's in the room. If I could switch to the Menti. Okay, so now that you have the Wi-Fi code, if you don't mind navigating to menti.com and entering this code or scanning the QR code, we have 2 or 3 questions to kind of get you understanding who's in the room. Are we all there? There are QR codes also on your tables? Yes, sorry. I was trying to read signs from back there. But there are also QR codes for this quiz on your table if you need them. So the first question is, how many ADB developing member countries do you think are attending this forum? And if you have insider knowledge, please pretend you don't and just guess. Those responses are going up quickly. So we're 58 people so far. Come on, got a few more. Great, so and the answer is, we've got 13 ADB DMCs in the room. And that's across the full Asia and Pacific region. So we're very excited to have you here. And secondly, if you could move on to the next question, if you could just type in a word or 2 about the expertise and themes that you are, where you have specialized knowledge or experience. So just free word typing in so we can see the word cloud. Great, we're seeing adaptation, finance, urban, technology, gender and social inclusion, social protection, social science research, inclusive finance, urban poverty reduction, NPS. Some more. Can I see that there? Great. Benchmarking, community resilience. Well, we wanted to do this because we wanted to give you a sense of who's in the room and the kinds of expertise and spread of and diversity of experiences that you're bringing. And also to say that all of our sessions actually rely quite heavily on participation and input. And I know that we might not all feel like we're experts on the themes that might be covered over the next 2 days. But the thing is that we all bring quite valuable insights, and that's what we really want to hear. So I do encourage you to take advantage of the opportunity to input into the dialogues, into the working group sessions, as well as in plenary sessions. So really do hope that you take advantage of that. So maybe if I could start sort of handing over to the opening remarks, I just wanted to say that each year we actually open with a representative and the member of Huayra Commission, which is a global network of grassroots women's groups and a core partner to the Community Resilience Partnership Program. In past years, we've heard from representatives from Indonesia and Nepal, And this year, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce Ms. Madeline Suarez, a grassroots leader and member of the Huari Commission and one of CRPP's partners. And she's also the president of the Alliance for the People's Organizations along the Mangahan floodway in the Philippines. So Madeline, if we could have you on stage to deliver your remarks, please.
Good morning. I am Madeline Suarez, a president of Alliance of People's Organization along Mangahan Floodway, Pasig City, Philippines. I am a grassroots women leader associated in Urban Poor Confederation of ULAP, a network of 58 grassroots women organization led by women. We are a member of the Huari Commission, a global movement that focuses on building grassroots women leadership to advance more gender-just, sustainable, and resilient communities. It is my honor to welcome all of you to the third CRPP Annual Forum. Together with our NGO partners, CO Multiversity or Community Organizers Multiversity, we OLAP have organized more than 36,000 families. These families are mostly from informal settlements. They are highly prone to flood, typhoons, and live with at risk of eviction. Government housing solution for urban poor tend to focus on distant relocation, which disrupt our livelihoods and worsen our access to basic services. This often result in resettled families returning to urban city centers. We have developed a people's plan process through which we work with partners to design settlements in response to community needs. The power of the People's Plan is that it cultivates sense of community ownership. But it is essential for us to negotiate and to collaborate with government to realize People's Plan. I want to share with you some examples of our People's Plan have helped us negotiate with government to build more safe, sustainable settlement. In our community at Damayan, Taytay, Rizal, it is a province of Rizal, 3,600 families negotiated with government to get funds from the municipality and Department of Interior of local government to implement the People's Plan. Damayan's plan included canals in each block and the construction of dike, both of which protect the community from flooding. We raised $1 million to construct an evacuation center which also functioned as people's school, used for community trainings activities, and the center is completely managed and maintained by grassroots women. In Mangahan Floodway, where I am from, our People's Plan negotiated with the National Housing Authority has already enabled 600 families to move out of the flood-prone areas near the riverbank. There are 300 additional housing units are now being built. The homes are elevated to protect them from flooding, and the rainwater harvesting structure supply water for community toilets and community urban gardens. We are also setting up better waste management to improve local sewerage and sanitation. In another area, in floodway embankment in Taytay Municipality, we have negotiated with a housing committee in Congress and the National Housing Authority to advocate in 700 families, and we're waiting to 8,000 families also to have their security and tenure. we received $720,000 from them, who have undertaken the land survey to verify entitlement of urban poor for their security of tenure. Our 58 communities have also organized community-based disaster risk management program committees to work closely with barangay and municipalities to prepare hazard maps, dissemination information of early warning systems, and organize emergency response and distribution of relief from government and NGO relief. We have secured tenure to terms for tens and thousands of families in our communities. We are better prepared to invest in upgrading and homes and settlements to address the challenges of climate change and more frequent disaster. We now to address heat waves and managing high maintenance costs in new settlement. But we continue to work with partners to find new solutions and advocate for policies to improve the lives of our communities. In the next 2 days, we look forward to learning from you, sharing our experience, and exploring strategies for partnership with all of you. As we strongly believe, we are not the problem, but we are part of the solution. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks very much, Madeline. And as Madeline mentioned, she will also be presenting during Spotlight 1 later this afternoon more about the work that they do and how that could be taken forward as well. So thanks very much, Madeline. If I may next introduce Ms. Anne Rooswell, the Deputy Head of the Social Protection Division at AFD for Southeast Asia, and who is also the co-chair of the CRPP Partnership Group this year. Please, Anne.
Can you see me? Okay. Hello, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. As you said, I'm Anne Rooswell. I'm the Deputy Head of the Health and Social Protection Department at the French Development Agency, AFD. We are very happy to co-share this forum this year alongside the Asian Development Bank. We really look forward to the insightful discussion of the 2 days to come. We extend our sincere appreciation to our colleagues at the Community Resilience Partnership Program, as well as all partners who have contributed over the past months to make this event possible. I also wanted to thank all participants, particularly representatives from the civil society organizations, government officials, development partners, experts, for their engagement in this dialogue. Just wanted to give you a few information about the French Development Agency priority on climate agenda. So our agency, AFD, French Development Agency, has made it a priority for several years now to support the climate agenda and align all its investments with the Paris Agreement. We recently updated our roadmap on climate and nature with some key evolutions that I wanted to share with you. Firstly, we're really trying to better integrate climate and biodiversity issues in our investments. We also want to have a stronger focus on adaptation. We also have a willingness to use a transversal lever in our action, which consists in better addressing the social and civic challenges of the ecological transition, what we call also the just transition, and a willingness to support projects that trigger and accelerate socioeconomic transformation in countries. Also wanted to mention that AFD recently signed the principles of locally led adaptation at the COP28. All this to show how much our work on the climate agenda is actually very much aligned with the CRPP approach. We're very proud that we've been a funding partner of the CRPP Trust Fund, and we strongly support its philosophy and the impact it is seeking. We are convinced that to respond effectively to the challenges that countries and populations are facing, we must develop social protection mechanisms that are anticipatory, absorptive, and adaptive, with stronger local ownership, leadership in their design, and implementation. The CRPP Trust Fund serves as a key lever to achieve these goals. The French Development Agency recognizes that social protection systems play a pivotal role in both mitigating carbon emissions and adapting to climate-related crises. Beyond bringing social and economic safety to ensure adequate living standards in the face of climate shocks, social protection is also a powerful instrument to make the climate agenda socially acceptable. Extending social protection with a gender-sensitive approach should therefore be a key pillar of the climate policies. In that context, we at AFD contribute to supporting decarbonization and ecosystem conservation, supporting a just transition to greener economy, and protecting vulnerable population before, during, and after climate shocks, ensuring basic income and financial access to healthcare. We use a variety of financing instruments to invest in social protection, and we favor co-financing with different partners, multilateral funds, public development banks, but also philanthropic foundations to develop innovative financing tools. I'm very happy that this year's forum focuses on urban resilience and financial inclusion. With cities hosting over 56% of the global population, generating 80% of global GDP and accounting for 70% of greenhouse gas emission, they are at the forefront of both climate challenges and solutions. I wanted to highlight key challenges in the climate resilience for urban areas. Firstly, as you know, increased exposure of cities to climate disasters. Urban areas face growing risk from floods, typhoons, rising sea levels, and heat waves. These events lead to destruction of housing and infrastructure, loss of livelihoods, and increased demand for emergency assistance. Secondly, migration and urban precarity. Rural to urban migration due to climate change contributes to growing slums, informal labor, and social tensions. Rising temperature, extreme climate events also contribute to the increase of non-communicable and infectious diseases, with a greater pressure on health and social protection systems. So there is a growing need for accessible healthcare and adaptive social protection mechanisms to address emerging health risks. And lastly, one of the challenges is also the fragility of labor markets and social security mechanisms in the face of those challenges. Climate-sensitive sectors such as construction, tourism, are particularly vulnerable. And so public policies and social assistance programs need to tackle these challenges of the informal worker sector that are underfunded. I'm sure that the collective knowledge and extensive experience of all the participants in the room that are gathered for this forum will help us develop innovative pathways to address this challenge in the 2 days to come. For AFD, our expectation for this forum is really to identify new priorities for research to explore collectively, but also to pinpoint investment opportunities where we could maximize the impact of our actions. So I really wanted to thank you for the opportunity to join this forum as a co-chair this year, and wanted also to announce that the French Development Agency is reinforcing its support to the CRPP team with the recruitment of a dedicated expert on adaptive social protection that will be based at the CRPP program for the next 3 years. So this expert that is who is currently being recruited will provide technical expertise on adaptive social protection and gender issues, operational and knowledge support within the CRPP framework, and portfolio development assistance for financing new adaptive social protection projects. We look forward to working together to scale up adaptive social protection system, ensuring that urban population in the Asia-Pacific region are better prepared to face the increasing challenges of climate change. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Anne, and thank you also for the continued support for CRPP. Next, it's my distinct pleasure to invite onto stage Mr. Pat Bourne, who's the ambassador to Thailand from the Government of Ireland, and who's also a supporter of the CRPP Forum this year. So welcome.
Thank you very much, Nisha. Colleagues from the Asian Development Bank, colleagues from Asian regional governments and Pacific governments, colleagues from civil society and others present. It's a great pleasure and an honour for me to be here today. As Nisha said in her introduction, I'm the Irish ambassador to Thailand and also covering Myanmar. Formerly, I was the ambassador to Singapore, looking after the Philippines while I was there, and I'm very proud of the fact that I was the first Irish ambassador accredited to the Republic of the Marshall Islands, to the Federated States of Micronesia and to Palau. So I've been in this region for a few years now, but that's, I suppose, not typical of Irish diplomats because Ireland is quite new to this region. Ireland these days is quite a prosperous, quite a developed country, doing quite well, but it wasn't always thus. And if we look back maybe a half a century ago or more, Ireland was a very poor country, a very agriculture-based economy, which was still recovering from the impacts of colonialism, the impacts of famine, mass emigration, and a lot of the challenges that still afflict many developing countries and countries in this region as well. So as we have done better and achieved more in terms of our economic performance, it's become a matter of great importance and great priority for the Irish people, for the communities in Ireland, and for our successive Irish governments to commit themselves to promote connectedness with the world, globalization, and that interdependence that we think is very important, and also to promote principles of justice, of fairness, of development and prosperity for all. So this is one of the reasons why Ireland has engaged more with the Asia-Pacific region over the last 20 years or so. We have developed a number of Asia-Pacific strategies, gradually deepening and strengthening our relationship in this region. We've opened more embassies. The embassy here in Thailand has only been open for 10 years. I'm the third ambassador here. Our newest embassy to open in the region was our resident embassy in Manila not long ago, which is also engaging with the Asian Development Bank. And we're putting more and more human resources and financial resources into Asia. We're also committed members of the European Union and inputting very substantially into the development of European Union policy and Team Europe activities in this region, including, of course, the European Union's Indo-Pacific strategy of engagement. And I'm very proud that that's part of Ireland's engagement in the region. We're also, as I said, committed members of the Asian Development Bank. We joined in 2006, and we've deepened and strengthened our engagement there. And I'm very happy that since last year we've become modest, small, but nonetheless donors and supporters of the Community Resilience Partnership Programme. And I'm humbled and proud to be name-checked along with the UK and France and the Nordics as part of that support network. So very, very happy, very proud to be here and very happy to share this stage today. I think this partnership forum of the CRPP is a very important forum. I feel a little bit like I'm just getting in the way because listening to Madeleine's opening remarks, I think it's really people like her and people like so many others that are around the tables here that we should be listening to and learning from today, and not boring old government diplomats like me. And I say that with no irony whatsoever, because when the expertise areas were flashing up on the screen there from the little Menti mobile phone survey, I felt very humble and very ignorant, because like most diplomats, I'm just a jack of all trades and master of none, whereas there is real, genuine expertise in the room. But nonetheless, I think Ireland as a country has something to offer, and I speak a little bit on behalf of those who are experts in Ireland and those who have developed Ireland's programme and Ireland's engagement in this region. We come from a number of very principled stances, as I said, written into our constitution from the day we became independent 100 years ago, is our commitment to support international justice, international fairness, international prosperity wherever it can thrive. In terms of our overseas aid programme, our driving principle is to support the furthest behind first, and arising out of that, we dedicate most of our funding and most of our engagement in least developed countries, and in this part of the world we have a special focus on small island development states, where we consider that our experience as a country very much resonates. We are a small island, we are a long way away, we are on the outskirts of a large continent, so I mean I think we have something in common with some of those who are most vulnerable to climate change in this part of the world. Our commitment to climate change, I think, is quite strong and strengthening, and we've made a promise to achieve a target of spending 225 million euros of our development resources on climate adaptation in 2025. On climate change programs overall in 2025, and the vast majority of that is focused on adaptation programs, which again I'm very proud of. The problem of climate change is a multifaceted one. It's a global problem, it's a national problem, but it's very much also a local problem. Ireland believes in tackling the problem at all those levels, and we're committed members of the United Nations and supporters of multilateral fora and instruments such as those implemented by the Asian Development Bank and others. We also believe strongly in supporting national governments and building their capacity and strengthening and supporting national programs. So we do have strong bilateral engagements in various programs, supporting those. But we are, I think, dismayed at the fact that figures show that of all the financing that goes towards climate change and climate adaptation, only 10% reaches local level and local level initiatives. And we very much believe that must change and that must be enhanced. And that's part of the reason why we want to support and are strong supporters of the CRPP, because much more can be achieved in many ways by initiatives at the local level. They are proven to be better value for money, they can be more effective, they promote local engagement, they promote climate positive activities, and look, no development at the end of the day, no poverty reduction, no resilience programs and no solutions to climate change are sustainable if they're not inclusive. Ireland is very proud also of the, I suppose, the contribution it has made to popularising and developing the concept of climate justice, particularly through our former President and former United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Mary Robinson, who established the Climate Justice Foundation in Ireland and has done so much to promote the principles and the tenets of climate justice, which are ever more popular, ever more mainstreamed and ever more accepted as a key part of our global approach to climate change. So we're very proud of that also. The focus of the CRPP on that nexus between poverty and gender and climate change is very important for us. And I was telling some of the people I was talking to earlier that while I'm no expert on this, I've done some research and read some of the literature around these the issues that are in focus this conference over recent days. And I have to say my eyes were opened and I was totally shocked to read that women are 14 times more likely to die in climate change related natural disasters than men, which I think is an absolutely gobsmacking statistic, and that women are 80% more likely than men to be displaced as a result of natural disasters. And I think that's an amazing, again, statistic. But as our first speaker today has demonstrated, women are not victims. They are agents of change, and women are not the problem. By no means. They are very much part, and a very large part, of the solution. So Ireland and we very much welcome the emphasis and the focus of the CRPP on supporting grassroots level women's groups initiatives to strengthen their capacity and to implement and scale up their climate change and resilience and poverty reduction activities. And we recognise very much the challenges in all of that. It is very difficult, particularly with the disproportionate imbalance in terms of the allocation of resources for grassroots organisations to prove concepts, to scale up and to implement their activities. But these initiatives can be transformational, and we must support that work. And that's why I think a conference like this today is very important and you know, absolutely central to the solutions going forward. Look, you know, we come together at a very crucial and a very interesting time in terms of international development initiatives, the global fight against climate change. We have amazing tectonic shifts going on in the geopolitical landscape and very radical changes taking place in attitudes towards development policies and development financing and climate financing. And I think that makes it all the more important in these times of uncertainty and unpredictability and vulnerability to shine the spotlight on communities, on local initiatives, and that's why I'm very proud to be here, very supportive of this forum and very much supportive of the work of the CRPP going forward. So thank you very much for inviting me along today, and very glad to be part of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Bourne. And if I could now invite Mr. Bruno Carrasco, who's the Director General of the Climate Change and Sustainable Development Department at ADB, please. Thanks.
Madeleine Suarez, Anne Roosevelt, Ambassador Pat Bourne, co-chairs from AFD, FCDO, and Nordic Development Fund, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. On behalf of the Asian Development Bank, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to this third annual partnership forum of the Community Resilience and Partnership Program. This is the second year in a row that I have the pleasure to join you. It's great to see many familiar faces and many new ones at that. Arguably, climate change is the biggest development challenge that we are facing in the Asia-Pacific region. And with it, it is increasingly wreaking havoc in many parts of our region. The science is clear. Now and through the next 20 to 30 years, climate risks will increase manifold. We have further learned that when it comes to climate change, these risk assessments cannot be guided by history, looking back at the trends. As with each passing year, we see new shocks, disasters that are more frequent as well, and that are bucking these trends. Moreover, in many cases, the impacts will be irreversible, and hence underscoring the importance of acting now. I'd like to give you two examples of how these climate risks are affecting our region. So continued and accelerating sea level rise will, of course, increasingly hit coastal communities with loss of life, destruction, and in many cases, such as our 4 atoll nations, pushing them towards existential risk. Looking at another part of our region, the Hindu Kush Himalayas, the third pole, the temperature there is rising faster than global averages, resulting in melting glaciers that will, of course, have dire consequences as they represent direct and indirect lifeline of nearly 2 billion people living downstream. So this puts into context some of the risks that we're seeing. It is not surprising that these impacts will be felt particularly amongst the poor populations that live in vulnerable areas, and of course depend on climate-sensitive sectors for their livelihoods, employment, etc. So these communities will be obviously impacted very hard, and of course with possibly lasting multi-general times. Recent research by UNESCO indicates that even with the 1.5 degree Celsius warming, regional average poverty rates could increase by 2.8 percentage points in our region. So this, of course, highlights the importance of climate change and its impact on poverty. Similarly, our work on heat stress and gender is helping us to recognize that disproportionate impacts are faced by women, as we've heard earlier, and of course, the importance of having a gender-focused solution to this work. Moreover, for climate actions to be successful, we need to adopt holistic solutions that are integrated, multi-sector, and of course address social inequalities. Findings of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change show that such solutions are most effective. They also bring out the importance of the need for greater effectiveness given the limited availability of finance. It is this need to address these three imperatives, climate, poverty, and gender, together that led ADB to establish the Community Resilience Partnership Program, or CRPP, back in 2021. And this is, of course, one of the many reasons that I like this work so much. Our traditional approaches that we often look to, sector siloed approaches, are not enough, are not sufficient to be able to address these important challenges that we face. We need to build more cross-cutting themes into our investments. We need to recognize that through this cross-cutting intersectionality, we have much greater impact for every dollar that we invest. I would also like to highlight that in the 3 years since we started this work, we're already starting to see signs of impact and progress. Over the course of today's sessions, we will see examples including in Nepal, where the CRPP is building resilience of rural women, and in Lao PDR, where the CRPP is helping to make the social protection system more shock responsive following on devastating floods. Of course, we cannot do this on our own, and we are most grateful to many of our partners, financial supporters, including Agence Française de Développement, the Nordic Development Fund, the Government of the United Kingdom, the Government of Ireland, and the Green Climate Fund for being part of this important CRPP journey. We're also pleased to continue our partnership with the International Institute for Environment and Development, as well as the Huayru Commission, who bring in their highly relevant expertise and experience in local resilience building. Now, through the CRPP, we are ensuring that ADB's ambition of providing at least $100 billion of owned climate financing between 2019 and 2030 does have an important focus on supporting the needs of the poor and vulnerable populations, and of course on local communities. This year's Partnership Forum will cover two important topics. As you know, every year we identify some themes within the CRPP framework. The first of the two topics will be on urban poverty, as you heard from Nisha, and urban poverty reduction programs, in particular building climate resilience from the ground up, especially in the face of growing climate risks. And the second one, that you'll see more tomorrow, how can financial inclusion support climate resilience of poor and vulnerable communities? So conversations over the next couple of days will help us formulate CRPP priorities for the coming years. I'm very excited to hear your insights, experiences, and services and advice of these two areas, as of course CRPP continues to grow and address new challenges. Last of all, I would like to thank many of our colleagues. We have Noel, we have Argo, we have Nisha, who have been real stalwarts in this work. I also am very happy to see a large participation from ADB in this forum. It's great to see everyone coming in, including from climate, from gender, from social sectors, and many others who are important drivers of this program. Last of all, I thank all the participants from our developing member countries, 13 of that, and I do hope that you get a lot of good insights from this work and you can take it back to your countries and be the champions for Community Resilience and Partnership Program. So with this, let me again thank you for joining us and wish you a very constructive 2 days. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, DG Bruno. So with that, we thought we would give you a little bit more of insight as to sort of the practical ways that CRPP is sort of progressing. And for that, if I could invite Mr. Urgo Sinha Roy, who's the Director for Climate Change at ADB, to give us an overview, please.
Thank you, Nisha. Good morning, everybody. So the CRPP has been operationalized for around about 3 years now. So what I thought I'll walk you through quickly about a bit of the objective of the program, what progress we have made, and what are some of the evolving insights of the program. We heard from Nisha earlier, the main objective of the program is to really scale up investments in adaptation at the local level. Investments that address the nexus between climate risk, poverty, and gender inequality, because these three topics cannot be achieved without the other. But also investments, while at local, can be delivered at scale. And this is very important, which means the program primarily works through government systems that can then deliver impact at scale. When I say system, I mean different things in different countries. A country which is highly decentralized, it's about seeing how the decentralization process that provides devolved decision-making promotes building resilience at the community level. It could also mean a country has a national social protection program and using that social protection system to deliver the resilience agenda at a household level. It could also mean a government has a nationwide program on agriculture, food security, and you're using that program to achieve resilience building at the local level. So it could mean different things in different countries, but it's important to deliver solution through government systems. So the way the CRPP architecture is organized is that we have a trust fund which provides very important resources to build the evidence, build institutional capacity from national to local to communities, specifically working with grassroots women's group, and to help governments identify what type of investments can deliver local solutions at scale. That stuff work, the preparatory work is done by the trust fund, which is very kindly supported by many of our donors. Once this program identifies these investments, then comes the investment fund, which essentially helps in implementing these investments with funding from ADB and the Green Climate Fund. And with the objective that end of a 10-year period, by 2031, we will reach 3.2 million poor and vulnerable people. We will improve the policy environment, and we'll be able to mobilize around $700 million of climate finance going at the local level. So that's a broad architecture. Last 2 years, while implementation has happened, we have gained insights from the field, and I thought it's important for us to highlight some of these insights. The first insight is that the poor and vulnerable communities in most of our countries are unfortunately already facing the climate impacts. But these impacts very closely are interrelated with the day-to-day challenges, whether it's livelihood, jobs, food insecurity, nutrition, etc. Which means at the local level, if you want to really deliver adaptation solutions, you have to work closely with the development objectives. Second point, insight is, at the local level, specifically by women's group, a lot of interesting work is happening. They are already trialing new solutions, new approaches. But these solutions need to be supported. Supported not just to be scaled up, but also supported to continue trialing, to learning from it, and sometimes even making mistakes. The third insight is that while at local level lots happening, and communities genuinely partner with local governments, there is a bit of a dealing between local governments, higher levels of subnational government, and national governments, which means the great work that's happening at the local level is not necessarily always informing or influencing national level policies and programs. That's the insight from the field. We also have some insights from policy insights from working at national level. It's not sufficient only for the climate policy environment to talk about local level adaptation. If we want to see solutions to be delivered at scale, we equally need every single sector, be it education, health, social protection, agriculture, food security, to recognize the importance of adaptation solutions at the local level. We also need the decentralization processes of the countries to recognize the importance of devolved decision-making for adaptation. And it's only when these policy coherence happens across climate, sector-specific policies, and decentralization policies, then you will see results which are meaningful and sustainable. I want to share a couple of examples from few countries. Bruno talked about the example from Nepal. So in Nepal, we all know government of Nepal is highly committed towards climate adaptation, specifically at the local level. So the government is currently implementing an investment program, around $30 million, in 2 of the western provinces of Nepal, which suffers from issues around water scarcity, national resource degradation, extreme flooding events, etc. So the investment project is looking at a landscape-based approach, looking at community infrastructure, nature-based solution that helps 68,000 farmers to build resilience through better irrigation systems, water supply, looking at issues around water resources management, to help really build holistically resilience. Where does the CRPP comes in is as a part of this program, we recognized because of out-migration of men, the largest number of people living in this area are actually women. So here, that's what CRPP comes in and provides dedicated funding targeted at 50 women's cooperative, which around reaches to about 7,500 poor and vulnerable women, to help them diversify their livelihoods from climate-sensitive sectors to better resilient sectors, and also connect the livelihoods to market. So the importance of working through existing mechanisms like Women's Cooperative is in Nepal, but connected to a larger government program which is delivering the services and the infrastructure, hopefully will be able to help these women improve resilience over time. Another example also Bruno mentioned is about from Laos. It's a social protection program the government is implementing in 12 provinces. It's a conditional cash transfer program focusing on nutrition-sensitive social protection. So part of CRPP's work was to help government design the program to make it more shock responsive, which means link it better with targeting systems, better with early warning systems, but also have a dedicated component which focuses upon the vulnerable women, around 4,500 women, who are engaged in a climate-sensitive poverty graduation program, which means along with social protection, you are providing a sequence different other measures, including livelihood diversification, skills training, financial inclusion products, more about social empowerment, and all with the objective of reducing poverty and building climate resilience. So once again, the CRPP is working through a government system of social protection program to deliver these solutions. These are just 2 examples. There are also examples happening in Timor-Leste, in Bangladesh, which I will not talk through today. To just wrap up, so there are a few insights which we are getting already in the last 3 years. They can be largely categorized in strategic insights and operational insights. I'll just highlight 3 of them. There are many opportunities to build local resilience, and traditional development sectors provide these opportunities. But unfortunately, the current conditions, the global context, whether it's a political context, but also the fiscal context in which developing countries work is very limited, which means it's a bit unfair to expect that you will have huge resources going towards adaptation and development separately. So at the local level, we have to find convergence to make sure every single dollar being spent for development or adaptation is actually benefiting both. The second insight is, it does take time to build resilience. The Nepal project which I presented was being designed for the last 3 years, is just being implemented now. The implementation will carry on for next 7 years. So you will not see results before 10 years, which means that if you want to engage in local level adaptation building, you have to be patient and work through the system. And we found our architecture of having a trust fund, doing the preparatory work, then the investment fund coming in, providing the money for implementation, working through government systems, is a potential good model to see how we can be engaged in the long run. And the third insight is perhaps most critical for me at least, that it's all of us over here, which means our institutions are all committed to this topic. But each of our institutions works in a very specific environment, and we are all constrained. So we have to find ways of how we can work together, where our work can be perhaps better complemented, better phased, better sequenced, so that our work together can have a much larger impact. Because at the end of the day, each of our institutions need to have some fundamental shift if we want to deliver resilience at scale. So with that, I'll end. I'll hope in the next 2 days we'll get more insights from all of you, which will feed back into our actual work when we implement these programs with the aim of delivering solutions at the local level. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Orko. And I think one of the key points there is not just the solutions that we might come up with, but also how we work through these solutions in our respective institutions. So hopefully you keep that at the back of your mind as we go through the next few days. Now, if we can move on to the scene-setting dialogue, I'd love to invite Noelle O'Brien, who's a director for climate change at ADB, to help us moderate this next session that will sort of discuss how we can actually pursue some of these investments that we've been talking about that bridge the topics of climate resilience, multidimensional poverty, and empowering communities. Noelle, please.
Thank you, Nisha. I know she's a strict timekeeper, but just a bit of a round of applause also for Nisha. It's about 1 year anniversary, so since she stepped in here, so for doing an amazing job with this. And so if I could ask our 4 panelists to join me on the stage. We have Daisy Alec Momotaro, who is the Special Representative Envoy on Gender, Youth and Children with the Office of the President and the Republic of the Marshall Islands. Thank you, Daisy. And then Sai Krishna Kumarasamy, who's the Financial Sector Specialist, Consultative Group to Assist the Poorest. Thank you, Sai. And then we have Eva Buselink, the Head of Policy Analysis and Networks Division, Development Cooperation Directorate at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD. Thank you, Eva. And then we have Paul Mitchell, who is the Principal Researcher and Team Leader with the locally led Adaptation and Climate Finance Group with the International Institute for Environment and Development. Thank you. I will join you if I can take a microphone. Oh, sorry. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I know we're short on time, so they will be hearing very little from me and from our panelists. So I'm going to turn firstly to the Special Representative Envoy. Is it okay to call you Daisy? Okay. All right. So the Republic of the Marshall Islands faces a unique set of challenges from climate change. Especially, it is one of the world's 4 atoll nations. Women are uniquely placed to drive resilience building efforts at the community level, and it would be great to hear from you your experience with implementing interventions that support climate change adaptation and that empower women as agents of change. And also, if you want to, what kind of support that you think is needed to make further progress in this area.
Thank you. Before I share my experience of doing these activities on social development and linking to climate change, I would like to thank the organizer of this forum, the ADB, and I would also like to acknowledge each and every one of you. Kamololani Mogadada, Yahweh, greeting from the Marshall Islands. Before I became the senator and the envoy for the women, youth, and children, I used to be a director for a big umbrella NGO women's group in the Marshall Islands. That is almost 38 years old now. And I was also the co-founder. And I was able to participate and experience a lot of social development projects, initiatives the NGO women's group did. We started doing climate change activities and program in 2005. And just to this NGO women's group called Women United Together Marshall Island with me, it was created to address the needs of women from the grassroots level. Women who've never gone to formal schooling, and these are like women from the front of our families, and they were the one putting bread and butter on the tables through making handicrafts, selling crops, planting, fishing, and all these above. But with the effect of climate change, things change for them. For example, this necklace I'm wearing is very popular, and the material is white because, you know, they boil the raw material in the rainwater. But when we have the long drought, they're not able to produce any of this material that is sustain the livelihood of their family. So what we did in the past, you know, we were on our own. I heard from the other statement yesterday that, you know, most of the NGOs are on their own. We experienced the same thing. But throughout these years, we have government are now on our side, and we are able to do a lot of work together. And my take for this too, how can we make it the intervention work is the through collaborative effort of the government, traditional leaders, the communities, the churches, and also the NGO. The NGO women's group in my country is quite very powerful because I come from a matrilineal society where the lineage, the land title go through the lineage of the grandmothers and the mothers. And Marshallese women, we try our best to stand strong so we can promote and preserve our culture because we will hold on to our culture. So we don't want any change. So all the women are going through a lot of hardship. We stand still and we're able to endure all these things. One of our projects that I'm seeing now that many Asian and Pacific countries are now doing, we started in 2003, is the ECD program. We were on our own. We went out and looked for funds from the US government. But when it was ended, we had to decrease our number of family enrolled because the money was so little. It took a long time to convince our government to recognize that early development life of a human person is very important. But lately, thanks to World Bank, we were able to receive money in 2020, and we were able to expand the program, early childhood program, to all the neighboring islands in the Marshall Islands. And I'm really happy that we stick to that. And this is, now we have the full support of the, our own government and the local government, traditional leaders, and the NGO and the churches. And I see it that this is the way we can sustain and continue with the, these important program we are all talking about, including the social development activities and initiatives, and also the, these are also linked to climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daisy. And moving Sai, you're working with the consultative group to assist the poor, and one of the key objectives of CGAP is generating evidence of what works, where, and for whom in the context of inclusive finance. So could you outline some of the key lessons emerging from CGAP's work on inclusive finance for building community resilience to climate change, and especially in the context of empowerment of communities?
Thanks, Noel. For those of you who are not familiar, CGAP's a global partnership that is housed at the World Bank and works on financial inclusion. So we act as a think tank or an innovation lab arm of the World Bank. I think it's not controversial in this room to accept that climate change is rapidly accelerating, and those who contribute the least are suffering the most. But there's hope in that inclusive finance can put resources directly into the hands of people on the front lines, helping them adapt to the realities of a changing climate. They can cope better with shocks, embrace green technologies, and bounce back stronger. But crucially, inclusive finance empowers communities to decide for themselves what are their climate adaptation priorities and strategies. Now at CGAP, we believe real impact begins with evidence, which is why we have developed the Impact Pathfinder. It is an online interactive platform that combs through existing global evidence and tells us what works, where, and for whom. So what have we learned? First, inclusive finance advances locally led adaptation. In Kenya, farmers who had access to formal credit were 3 times more likely to invest in climate-smart practices like soil and water conservation, rainwater harvesting. Second, inclusive finance also fuels the uptake of green technologies, which is essential for a just transition. In India, you have credit that's enabling women dairy farmers to invest in biodigesters. Now, these are machines that convert farmland waste into cooking fuel. And this has led to household savings on cooking fuel, which was equivalent to as much as 8% of annual household income. And third, we also have inclusive finance bolstering climate resilience. In a weather index insurance pilot in Malawi, we had about 80% of insured farmers who did not have to sell their livestock assets during a period of extreme drought, whereas more than half of uninsured farmers had to sell off these very valuable assets. So what we learn is when communities are empowered with the right financial tools, they can take charge of their own climate adaptation and build long-term resilience. But sadly, today's climate conversations don't focus on these. Everybody's talking about how much money is needed and who's going to pay for it, but very little focus on who should receive the money and what are the mechanisms for us to get the money to them. And inclusive finance is very important there. There are very few linkages between inclusive finance and climate finance. The financial services that are available to low-income households, small businesses, and other vulnerable segments are not designed keeping in mind climate change. And even providers of such financial services often lack the insights, the tools, or the strategies to serve an increasingly climate vulnerable customer base, particularly from the low and the middle income segment. So where does this leave us, right? So I think the first thing is financial inclusion should be at the heart of climate action. It truly empowers communities, especially women and girls, to prepare for, to cope with, and recover from the realities of a changing climate. But this isn't really about economics alone, it's about equity, which is why it needs all of us, the private sector, the public sector, philanthropic partners, to come together to design this inclusive and resilient financial ecosystem. And it's only then we can ensure that finance truly flows where it's needed, and then we build a resilient future for everybody.
Thanks a lot, Sai, and that's a conversation we'll continue tomorrow, and I think it will be also really interesting to connect with the whole fintech dimension on that. Inclusive finance would be very valuable. Thanks a lot. Ava, the OECD has been undertaking research on climate adaptation governance. So can you please share some of the emerging insights from research on the way that climate adaptation finance should be programmed to address governance-related barriers, especially in the context of addressing this multidimensional nature of poverty and risks?
Thank you, and good morning, everybody, and it's a real pleasure being here. I'm happy to share some policy insights from our side, building not only on our community of members and partners, but also really incorporating a series of case studies that we've carried out across different regions. A first element relates to something that was already referred to previously, and it's the challenge or the importance of busting silos. And busting the silos between climate and inequality, not only as a principle, but really as a strategy, and to understand also not only synergies, but also trade-offs, and making these trade-offs in a very deliberate way. And that would bring me also to the second point, and it's when we prioritize the programming, really also looking into balancing an analysis of the more biophysical dimensions with the vulnerabilities, also acknowledging that these different elements of vulnerability are rooted in societies and not just a snapshot, but build on historical and societal realities. A third element I would like to mention, and it was already referred to by the climate director previously, is the notion of tackling complexity and proliferation. And one way of doing that is indeed going through systems, but it also requires to balance the instruments and keep that in check and under control, and therefore supporting literacy, navigating those instruments available and making them accessible. Fourth element that emerged out of our research really focuses on the importance not just of local community consultation, but really partnering, acknowledging the agency of the local communities, and thinking about adaptation coalitions. And I think what is also important there is that agency is rooted in different dimensions. It requires combining the added value that brings the political perspective, but also the administration, the entrepreneurial, and really getting those contributions together and getting the most out of it. A fifth and a sixth element to close are maybe a little bit more controversial, but really also came true in our case study work. One is acknowledging that also at the local level, politics is part and parcel of being successful and navigating the challenges, and embracing that and getting the most out of it. And then as a final element to conclude, it's also important to think sometimes out of the box and not just go for the most obvious solutions, and they're really maximizing, tapping into the available resources can lead us to less obvious solutions, whether that is related to accessing markets, mobility, getting the most out of mobility, and even potentially migration that comes in different shapes and forms. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Eva, and I think that's a perfect point to connect with Paul, because IIED has been championing the push for greater commitment to putting the resources into local hands for local adaptation priorities for so many years, and has so much of that experience. So can you share with us the experience with programs like the LDC Initiative for Effective Adaptation and Resilience, and under what enabling conditions do these programs work, and where do they need more complementary approaches?
Thanks, Noelle. Good morning, everybody. I feel like everything I'm going to say has already been said, but let's just double down and reinforce. And I also have 6 points to make. I thought I would be the outlier because people like to work in threes. So before my 6 points, I mean, as has already been said, climate change is a global problem, but it is differentiated and hyper-local in its impacts. And there's an increasing acknowledgement and an understanding that in order to effectively address the risk of climate change, it needs to be done at the local level. Unfortunately, most adaptation programs and projects are still top-down, donor or national policy driven, and that doesn't always respond to the multiple local contexts that it needs to address. So what can we do about that? So I was thinking about enabling environments, and my 6 points that I'll try and get through really quickly. The first one is, essentially we need clarity on the fundamentals. We need to agree what we mean by local and what we mean by locally led. Is it government? Is it CSOs only? Is it only community groups? Is it NGOs? What does it mean? And it can mean all of those things, but we need to have an agreement on what it is. We also need to agree what we're trying to achieve and for whom. Second thing is we need to agree on the overarching framework to guide our action. Now, there's lots of ways that we can do that. One that I would love to promote and has already been mentioned several times is the principles for locally led adaptation, but there are other ways to do it as well. But we need to have some agreement on what those fundamentals are and where we're starting from and where we're heading to. The third is that we have to attack the problem from all levels simultaneously. We need to work at the global level with donors, with MDBs. We need to work at the national level to get the policy settings right. At the subnational level to make sure that provincial governments are not blockers, unanticipated or unintentional blockers to climate action. And at the local level to effectively channel and utilize that finance. Fourth, we need to utilize the relative ease of those top-down approaches that we're all so used to working in. We can use things like top-down approaches to enable local level action. And the program you mentioned, Noel, the Life AR program, is a really good example of that, of helping national governments build systems and mechanisms that effectively channel finance to the local level, but not dictate what it's used for once it gets there. Fifth is we need to build in flexibility right from the start. We can't wait for magical flows of finance to come through. We can't wait for all of the policy settings to be exactly right. We need to get moving now, and we need to make sure that we're not dictating from the start how things should be pursued and what they should look like at the end. We need flexible, context-responsive budgeting. We need to be able to evolve our outcomes as the context changes over time. And then the last one is really short. It's simply trust. We need to ensure that all actors in the climate finance delivery chain are trusting each other to do what needs to be done and not micromanaging. Just a very last point, if that's okay, because you mentioned multidimensional poverty at the end, and Argo mentioned this as well earlier. I think we have to also ensure that we know that adaptation doesn't occur in a vacuum. Right? There's that adage that people who are healthier, wealthier, and better educated are inherently more adaptive to the impacts of climate change and other kinds of shocks. But conversely, effective adaptation can also increase people's access to wealth, people's access to healthcare, and people's access to education. So making sure that everything we do is working from both directions is critically important.
Thank you very much, Paul. So I think we've covered in a very short period of time a really key aspects of the conversation for the next 2 days. And we could go on back to our panelists again, but what I wanted to do was to give the audience an opportunity. We've got time for 2 or 3 very short interventions. So if you would like to ask a question directly of one of the panelists, or you want to add from your own experience, please, we have a couple of microphones, and the clock is ticking very quickly. Anybody who wants to take this opportunity? Okay, there's a microphone right behind your head. Just please say who you are and who you're with as you do so.
Alan Silayan from the CRS, Catholic Relief Services. My question is to Sai, and you mentioned a very, very interesting point to me, and this is really access mechanisms for local institutions and local communities. Could you say more about that, and what sort of access mechanisms do we need to have in place? Because what I'm seeing currently in my work is that, for example, I work with local governments, and local government administration timeframes are very different, let's say, from multilateral timeframes. So if you have a mayor whose term is only for 3 years, and you try to apply for a multilateral financing, just the application itself and writing the proposal takes 1 year. So that's already, or 2 years just to access the financing, and that's already, 2/3 of his term. So, and another thing is what we're seeing is there's a disconnect with scale. The availability of scale is not connected to what the scale is needed at the local level. So maybe if you can speak more about these sort of mechanisms that we need to be able to access these financing at a local level. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to take a bunch of questions, or can I respond?
Please go
Perfect.
ahead.
Thank you. I think this is where the favorite word of all development practitioners, public-private partnerships or blended finance comes in, right? Because I do not think it is the job of multilateral organizations to be innovating it's a market-driven process. But where multilateral organizations come in is de-risking innovation, right? Providing the technical assistance, funding for research that can really catalyze market innovations. You asked about access mechanisms, right? Think about, a mobile money wallet into which you can make social welfare payments, anticipatory payments, but again, making sure that the mobile money account is fungible, it's connected and interoperable with other accounts, that people have the choice where to receive their money into. Likewise, access to savings groups, making all of this more digital so that even when it's a disaster response, you're always building the rails to long-term financial inclusion, and you never lose sight of repayment behaviors, savings behaviors, making sure you have enough cash-in, cash-out points, because even when the flow of money is digital, the communities locally tend to spend in cash. So being able to convert e-money into physical money, likewise access to credit, and in very specific tailored ways, right? So credit that is required for rebuilding when disaster hits is very different from, say, a savings account that you could use to cope with the shocks. So there's several access mechanisms from like the finance community. And I guess as representative of that community, for me, it's a great opportunity to be able to speak to the climate community, because I think we have been working in silos and never had this conversation. And I'm always like, no matter what you do in climate action, you're always going to need the plumbing to take money from the trillions of dollars that the big guys give and to put it in the hands of low-income vulnerable communities. And that plumbing is inclusive finance. So I hope that sort of gives you a flavor of the mechanisms.
Thanks a lot, Sai. And I think the really important part in this whole question is also where each country sees itself on that journey, because obviously some countries have been on the inclusive finance journey for a longer period of time. The instruments are in place, the fintech is in place, and so how do we add climate into that? Whereas in other countries, we're still only beginning that journey of inclusive finance. We're only beginning the journey of fintech. It was 12 years ago, I sat down in a conversation in Kenya on these wallets with those who were designing the fintech at the time. And we were talking from a climate perspective back then. So, it is a really, we also, I think that's, to me, is the critical point from across the conversations, that even in local level, we find different actors, we find different personalities. And so we have to also consider the unique dimensions within each context. And maybe I'm going to give Daisy the last words on this panel and to just share some of their unique experiences from the Marshalls.
Thank you very much. As I had mentioned in my before, I mentioned that, I first worked with the NGO Women's Group that was created in 1987. We were all alone. But in 2011, we lobbied our government to create a Domestic Violence Prevention and Protection Act, because we believe that in order for our women to be empowered, they cannot go through violence at home. And it was a very challenging, but then it was passed, but then it was not implemented because there was no fund for it. And in 2014, we were able to get funding from Australian government, and we started implementing, raising awareness, and also partnering with our Attorney General's office and our legal counselor to raise awareness with our police department and also the first responder. Now we are working closely with our government, and we are able to continue with the awareness of the Domestic Violence Prevention and Protection Act. And the other one is we created a project to economic empowerment of women. And this is to address the vulnerable women that they never had formal schooling. And this is an ongoing project where loans, small credit scheme loan, are going to the women who cannot get loan from the bank, because only 3 banks in the Marshall Islands, they only give loans to those women they have bi-weekly paycheck. And this credit loan scheme loan is, money came from the Taiwan government, 1 million for the grassroots women to create their small business, entrepreneur, from $500 to $10,000. So this is some of the things, and I'm seeing that working closely together, collaboratively, is the way we can have these initiative resilience and continue on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daisy. And with that, let me ask you to give a big round of applause to the panelists and all of the opening speakers for this morning's session. So, with that, I will invite you to 2 photographs. If I could invite the opening speakers to come to the stage, and we will take 1 photo with the panelists. And then in the meantime, if all of the other participants can make their way to the main stairway in the center of the hotel entry, we will have the conference photo. So we'll do that as swiftly as we can, and then we will have coffee and snacks served outside. So thank you, everybody.